my God. What is going on, everybody? I'm so excited. I am so elated. It is my distinct honor to have Rohan Chakravarthi on here once again. But this time's a little different. We're not babbling about the off season about stuff we don't know about. We actually have concrete proof of things that are actually happening. Rohan's been at camp all the days that fans and media are allowed to be there. So, Rohan, how you doing? And how has your experience been so far?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's an honor to be back on the show. Obviously, always enjoy talking to you both on and off camera, and definitely excited to, chop it up for the next hour. Training camp, though, has been surreal. Like, when you talk about it, this is the first training camp that I've been at personally. And it's just such a different experience when you're there. I've definitely enjoyed it. And because I've gotten this opportunity from my work and obviously an opportunity with my platform, I just love putting out the content and giving guys, everybody, just a chance to see what's happening from a different perspective.
I've been seeing your views on your live streams are starting to really pick up, so I'm really happy for you.
Thank you, man.
I feel like this time of year, you're like, I know with myself, sometimes my motivation kind of dwindles when we get to like really right before camp. Like that whole month is like just really dry with really anything to talk about. And then of course camp starts and Debo gets paid, and there's a lot of stuff going on at camp that's really worth talking about. You could talk about, how Trey Lance is kind of, struggling against the defense, and what's the defense, what's him, how do you differentiate the two? So I figured that'd be the first topic to really get into. Trey Lance, I have it here written as, I mean, he's making a lot of big plays with either his legs or his arm, but he has had some struggles.
Right.
Would you, who would you give more of the credit to? Would it be more of the defense that is giving him fits, or is it just, lack of reps and him just really still trying to find his way?
I would 100% provide it to the defense. Like when you talk about Trey Lance's struggles, or you call it inaccuracies, you really have to think about it with context. And obviously, being there, I understand where the context is, as opposed to just seeing the numbers, right? Like you throw Trey Lance's best throwing performance was 10 of 16 today, and then on Saturday it was 8 of 15. However, that 8 of 15 goes up when you factor in the drop and you factor in, I forget what the other play was. It was like a throwaway. No. 8 of 15 with 2 drops on Saturday. So that just instantaneously increases the accuracy. And you're like, oh, that's not that bad. And then when you factor in the depth of each throw, and when you factor in the incompletions and how they were actually accurate, you're like, oh, it's actually a pretty damn good day overall. And so to me, I'm very excited in a way to see what Trey Lance has done. One surprise, I'll say, because you talk about the defense, right? The defense has been locked down. Like, obviously, I expected an increase based off last year's coverage with the signing of Charvarius Ward, but I didn't expect the play to be like this. There have been several plays on certain days where there is just nobody to throw the ball to. And so there are things called coverage sacks where it's not necessarily that the offensive line had a bad rep. It's just the defensive line. It takes maybe 5 seconds to get there, but because the coverage was so stout, there's nowhere to throw it to, and it ends up being a sack. So overall, there have been really good plays by the defensive line, but the coverage has been the most elite thing that I've seen out of the entire 49ers training camp so far.
Just want to say a real quick shout out to Chris Royal. You're really, really nice about what you're saying. I appreciate it very, very much. He says, let's get it. Got Niner Sickness in here. Me and No Border Sports and Bashar, we have the NWO show that we do on Mondays. It might have been Ryan who said that, or it could have been any of the three of them, that like sometimes, the secondary actually helps the pass rush. Last year it was a lot of just the pass rush, and the secondary was kind of questionable, other than maybe say like Emmanuel Mosley, but we struggled last year in coverage for sure. So it's kind of, it almost works in kind of like a symbionts or a
correct. Yeah.
They're like this amalgamation of like two things. You got great coverage that leads to sacks, and then you have great pressure that leads to the coverage looking better than what it could be. So when they're both maybe on the same level, yeah, it's got to be tough for even a guy like Lance. I read some report, I don't know who it was from, that says that he's still dealing with how to kind of run the ball. Like he almost runs in a lateral way instead of kind of cutting up field. And it's almost like he's not comfortable doing it. And they said once his athletic ability takes over and he's not guessing as much, because I even noticed that last year when he used to run the ball, he didn't look comfortable. I don't know if it's just trying to avoid injury or avoid big hits or whatever. But when he actually, there was a camp highlight where he really just turned it upfield and he was like, okay, see, that's what I'm talking about. I don't want him to per se be a running quarterback. I don't think that it can be long-term successful, because I think once teams kind of figure out that you can't really throw the football, you're kind of screwed, kind of like with Kaepernick, how his play level went down once teams kind of got a feel for what he was doing. I think with Trey actually looks to throw first and run second. So it's hard for me to I look at the reports and I'm kind of like, that's not too great. But then I start to I look at it and I'm like, but this is training camp and this is he's technically a rookie if you think about it. So all of us who say we support Trey Lance and we're going to go through whatever he is that he's dealing with, this is kind of part of that thing. And that's going against a really good defense, and maybe he needs to get quicker with his reads or whatever. But like you said, maybe it's just the defense is so damn locked down, and multiple guys, Aponte, anybody, they were just like the Niners corners and secondary is got the lock on people. So maybe that's it. So I would like to see him against another defense, hopefully soon, when we get the preseason or a scrimmage, see if he actually, maybe his completion percentage goes up. I think a lot of us are just making too much out of it. I don't really worry too much, but I'm
not worried at all. Yeah, at all.
You're actually there. You're watching.
Yeah.
So I respect your viewpoint. There's a lot of people, Grant is somebody, he's a tough nut to crack as far as but he's really big on Trey Lance. And he pretty much makes the point that of a lot of these throws that he's making, Jimmy would never attempt. So the difficulty level of some of the throws that you're seeing, as opposed to a guy that just hits his checkdowns. Of course, you're 10 to 12 looks great, but if you look at it as a whole, it's not that impressive. Whereas a guy tries to fit something in there against really good coverage. I mean, that one throw to Brandon Ayuk that everyone oohs and ahs about, including myself. I mean, Jimmy on his best day couldn't make that throw. And the throw is right exactly where it needs to be. It's kind of a way back shoulder, kind of falling backwards. That's the only way you're going to get it in and against a corner like that. So
yeah, exactly.
I think there's a lot to what everything that a lot of things are being reported. You got your anti-Niner people are going to be like, see, told you he sucks. He's a bust after 6 practices. And then you got the guys like yourself or others that are actually intelligent and, allow things to kind of take their true form over time, who actually are like, you know what, maybe it's just the fact that he's going against a damn good defense. And defense always usually rules a roost for a while, at least in training camp, because that's how it usually is. Defense is always ahead of the offense. So I'm not really worried either, but it's just interesting to see people lose their crap over stuff that we kind of already saw coming. And it's like, guys, it's okay. We still have a month before the season starts. So I'm not worried at all.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about it, right? Trey Lance and his ability to make uncanny throws. Grant, I understand how Grant is, but in that aspect, he's right. Trey Lance does make throws that Jimmy Garoppolo wouldn't even wonder to attempt. And it's not a slight at Jimmy Garoppolo, right? I mean, he functions in the way that he functions, and he does so in some, when he's on his good days, right? He does so effectively, but it's not that pushes the ceiling of a team. That's just how I view it myself. Garoppolo can hit throws over the middle in tight windows, but the thing is, Garoppolo, his inefficiencies elsewhere, dictate where the offense goes, and overall has stopped the 49ers from reaching the goal that they truly want to reach. Trey Lance might have inefficiencies, but the ceiling that Trey Lance has pushes the 49ers over the top, at least in my eyes from what I've seen, because so far, Trey Lance's best asset has been Garoppolo's worst asset, and that's the deep ball. I think the 49ers are going to air it out at least early if they want to play to Trey Lance's strengths, and also throw a bunch of short passes, because when you talk about Trey Lance, before, I think it was I was compiling the deep throw accuracy, and I think up until yesterday it was 6 of 12. Today he completed a couple more. 6 of 12, and then you factor in that 3 of those incompletions were dead on accurate balls too. A 35-yard ball to Brandon Ayuk on the left sideline, which Emmanuel Mosley just made a great play, pinned him out, and as he tried to keep both feet in, Mosley hit it out. The 40-yard play to Juwan Jennings on the right sideline. Both of these plays were on Thursday, where Travarius Ward hit it out as Jennings tried to corral it in. And then there was a 17-yard play to Ray McLeod where he threw a dart over the right sideline. Hufanga just got in, deflected the pass. So there have been accurate throws. It's just sometimes they turn into incompletions. And so that's why I don't necessarily look at completion percentage and say, damn, he sucks, or damn, he's looking really good. I try and factor in everything, because when you look at a completion percentage, I think Brock Purdy has been the most accurate quarterback. Does that mean he's the best? No, his average depth of target is probably below 7 yards, which is very, very poor for an NFL quarterback. And so to me, it doesn't matter really to me about the completion percentage. It matters, what am I seeing? Why is the play developing as it is? And did Lance make a good read? And is the accuracy most importantly there?
I was listening to the Locked On 49ers this morning before my shower. So today was one of my days off. And one of the points, Brian, it could have been Peacock or it could have been Eric Crocker making, is that they don't really want to see you hit checkdowns in camp. They want you to, like, you can have a really good completion percentage in camp if you're hitting checkdowns constantly. But, I respect more a person that's going through progressions, that has the rush at his ankles, and he's able to kind of figure things out while everything's moving really fast, instead of always hitting the check down to the running back or whoever the check down is. Doesn't matter who the player is, but and people always say camp is where you work on things. If we're not supposed to stress out that Jimmy threw 5 or 6 straight interceptions, that was it last year or 2 years ago, then everybody needs to chill on Trey Lance too. It is. I'm not gonna lie. I do pay attention to the completion percentage a little bit. I do. It is interesting because I'm not there and I don't see the difficulty of some of these throws. So, but I respect anybody who's actually been at training camp and has been watching it. So I'm definitely, this is a good time, for 49er fans, because we have a chance, if things work out this year, to be really good. Defense, offense, everything. So, let's talk Debo, the contract that everybody has been waiting for seems like forever. It finally happened a couple days back. Debo getting $73.5 million. I don't know if these numbers keep changing, so I don't know if I'm accurate.
Yeah.
With $58.1 million guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Were you ever worried about Debo Samuel getting paid, or was it just a matter of time and this is how these things work out?
I personally was not worried. I actually, as soon as the second he wasn't traded on April 29th, the first round of the draft, as soon as pick 10 went and we heard that Debo Samuel was not moving to become a New York Jet, because I had heard inklings beforehand. Exactly. That is very true, Chris. But I'd heard inklings beforehand that it could be a move, but there was a super high asking point, and it proved true. Kyle Shanahan even said it himself. And Debo Samuel, after that, I had no issues with it. I thought that Debo Samuel was going to be a 49er regardless of how the situation played out in the next couple of months. I knew that Samuel was at least going to set up for 2023, and I had optimism that he would sign an extension, because he himself understands this is a business, and if he can't get that trade done before the draft is done, then he isn't going to sign an extension in 2022 unless it's with the 49ers. And you don't want to go into this last year of your contract. Obviously you don't want to go in without a contract, risk injury, and lose millions of dollars. So it's a smart move by Debo. I think that contract was going to be done, and I'm actually kind of surprised by it. I thought he'd honestly get more money than he got, and it's an amazing contract for both sides. I still think it's a win-win, and I can explain that in a minute, but I actually thought Debo would get a little more money based on what DK Metcalf got.
I know there's an out in one of the years. It might be the last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
The Niners can get out.
It's in a way it's out because there's no guaranteed money. So how contracts like this work is there's 3 years on the deal, 3. but there's only 2 years of guaranteed money, which means that last year is pretty much non-guaranteed, except there is going to be a $7 million cap hit because of the signing bonus. So that's how the contract works. And I'd expect some sort of re-extension or something like that at that time. Obviously, that's in 2025. We don't have to worry about that now. Debo is a 49er.
Larry Kruger always makes a good point, and I've repeated this a million times on a ton of my streams, is you don't give away good players. You don't trade them away. You don't let them go. And that we were talking about this in the NWO stream last night, is this whole like, oh, we could just draft a replacement. It just doesn't work like that. You can't guarantee that what you're drafting is going to ever be of the same talent level or motivation or passion that the guy that you're giving up. So, I'm all about trying to keep as many guys as possible. I know it's impossible. I mean, for instance, we had to give up Lincoln Tomlinson this offseason. But that's, you got to keep that core together. The Niners are trying to extend this window. And with Trey having a smaller cap hit right now, it's allowing the 49ers to make these kind of moves. And I'm okay with that. And that's one of the reasons why they're trying to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo eventually, someday, if it ever happens. What did you think of Debo's response to the report of saying that oh my God, it's leaving my mind.
Thing?
Yeah, and that he didn't want to run the football, and he pretty much said that's just made up. Do you think that was ever an issue, or was that just kind of something put out by an agent or some reporter trying to get some traction? What do you think that is?
I actually kind of talked about this a couple of months ago. I don't think it was an issue about usage. It was 100% an issue about money, but money correlates to usage. Why? Yep. Because when the 49ers initially started this contract, I'm assuming they wanted to lowball him in a way that paid him like a running back. Because what is the highest contract for a running back currently on the market? Christian McCaffrey's 4 year, $64 million contract. What's the difference? The highest guaranteed money that a running back has gotten is $30 million. What's the highest for a receiver, you ask? $75 million. There's a huge stark difference. Debo Samuel probably believed that deservedly so believed that he wanted to be paid like a receiver. And so that was the difference. And so I think that that's where this originated. Debo, it's not that Debo didn't want to be used as a running back. He didn't want to be paid like one because he also has such a strength as a receiver that he probably thought it was not like a correct term of how he should be used. Because essentially last year, Samuel was used as a running back out of necessity. It's not because he is a running back. It's just because the 49ers had nobody else at the position after Elijah Mitchell went down and started using Debo Samuel there. I think he's going to still reprise that hybrid role. He said it himself. I like the wide back term today. We saw it after the Cowboys game. He said, Kyle, get me the ball. He's a guy who just wants to win. And then you saw him at the Pro Bowl coin his own merch, wide back. He loves the term. He loves he just loves playing football. He's a guy who loves the game. And I never thought it was about usage. I just continuously thought it was about money. And normally also it's never usually like an issue between the player and the actual in the actual coach. It's normally the agent, right, handling these negotiations. And so that's where the information gets trickled down. And so that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that as much as I love the wide back stuff, I would like to see it less. I like to see the running backs actually do that job, only because we know the type of injuries situations he's had in the past. Same thing with Kittle. I mean, me and my brother were talking about this. I said the Niners are super physical and they impose their will, but unfortunately, when they do that, they hurt themselves. Niner Sickness made a good point last night. You can't play afraid. You have to play the way that you play. Mm-hmm. And if you get hurt, you get hurt. So I understand that, but I still would like to see maybe a little bit less in the backfield, just because I feel like we have a ton of running backs that hopefully can stay healthy this year that could do the job. But listen, man, at the end of the day, if he's okay with it, and he's getting paid, then whatever my opinion is on the situation really has absolutely zero bearing. I just want to see my favorite players stay healthy and not get hurt, but I guess that's a pipe dream. Let's jump to I'm trying to think. Let's jump to the offensive line here.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk about the offensive line being porous in camp. I heard today or read today that today was one of their better days. Yes. What's your honest assessment of the offensive line? Are they doing a lot of trying to figure out who goes where, a lot of mix and matching, and maybe that's causing some of the protection issues? Or are guys really struggling? Is it our defense? What if you had to put your finger on it, because it could be a combination of things. What is your from watching camp? What's your opinion of what you think the struggles from the offensive line stem from?
First of all, I believe the concerns that people have heard and people are going with the offensive line are overblown. I actually don't think it's as concerning. And today proved that point for me. And that was without Mcglinchey, their second best offensive lineman there. So, in the beginning of camp, obviously everybody heard about, oh, Spencer Burford is now your first team right guard. There's a center battle. And the other thing, the most important thing that people didn't realize, who was starting at left tackle and right tackle? It wasn't Mike Mcglinchey in scrimmage. It wasn't Trent Williams in scrimmage. No, it was Colton McKivitz and Jalen Moore, both of whom struggled at their initial positions. And that was a reason why the offensive line looked as porous as it did, because the offensive line isn't as important as five guys playing on an offensive line. Instead, it's the relationship between the guards and the tackles, as well as the guards and the center. Everybody needs to be connected, because if you don't trust the guy next to you, you can't just do your job. You have to help the other person do their job as well. And it's not that you have to help them, but you have to at least constantly think about another position as well, just overblowing the responsibilities. And you got to remember, most of these guys are hella young, right? You talk about Jalen Moore, he's a second-year player. You talk about Spencer Burford, he's a rookie. Aaron Banks, second-year player. Colton McKivitz, I think third-year player now. It's like none of these guys are that experienced. So that's why the offensive line significantly struggled initially. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They looked pretty bad on the first couple of days. It was also the first days of install with a completely new offensive line. All five of those players on the offensive line to start did not start there in 2021. So that is another thing to mention, right? But the defensive line dominated. It's just a matter of fact. And even now, they're still playing pretty good, right? The defensive line is one of the best in the NFL, even without our who's out there, and on Ridge and Mo Hurst, who all got injured so far. It's still a pretty good defensive line. And so that is obviously a factor into it. The practices that I care about the most are the last three practices, because Mike Mcglinchey and Trent Williams returned on Saturday. Williams looked good. Mcglinchey looked rough on his first practice because he was right. Imagine coming back from a long injury, and the first guy you see right across from you is Nick Bosa. Mcglinchey was just thrown in the fire. I like the strategy, right? Test against the best just when you're coming back. It's like no days off. Mcglinchey he had a rough day on Saturday. He got beat by Bosa once for a sack. And then the second play, he got beat by Bosa again and then held him. So those were some of the reps, and he was again limited. But I don't care about that day, because the first day of pads was yesterday. And Mcglinchey looked awesome. Mcglinchey and Trent Williams both looked great. Mcglinchey lined up against Bosa again. Bosa did beat him once. He had a nice outside move, then jab to the inside, and Mcglinchey got beat. But Mcglinchey held his ground in the other reps. Mcglinchey against Nick Bosa worked pretty well, twice or three times. And these guys are limited. Trent Williams was Trent Williams. He looked good as usual. I think he gave up one pressure to Samson Ebukam, and that was it. But both of them look good. And then because they look good, the interior guys look good as well, because they now are a little more comfortable. It's all about comfortability. Yesterday, the issue with the offensive line was the run game. They couldn't really protect for the inside run. You saw 0, 1, and 2 yard carries for a majority of the inside runs, but the outside run flourished. Then you fast forward to today. And I preface, without Mike Mcglinchey, Jalen Moore started at right tackle, and Trent Williams again being somewhat limited. The offensive line looked really good today. The protection over the first scrimmage was some of the best protection I've seen. No, it was the best protection I've seen so far in camp. The performance waned in the second half, I'll be honest. There was a lot of more pressures. There were 3 coverage sacks today, so that I don't blame too much on the offensive line, but there were some poor plays towards the end from the offensive line. But I think this unit is finally starting to get some cohesion. That was what they lacked early, and a big part of it is Daniel Brunskill being handed most of the first team reps today. He probably did get handed the starting job. I think he's the starter now. He got handed, in a way, the starting job. There's no more competition, in my opinion, but it's good. The 49ers needed somebody there to be at center for the majority of the time, because both centers operate differently. The tendencies not only affect the guards, but they affect the quarterbacks. So I think that was important for that move. And today, everything worked. The outside run worked. The inside run especially worked. You saw a couple of 5, 6, 7-yard gains. And then the pass protection for the first half, at least, was pretty damn good. So good day for the offensive line. It's still a work in progress. And I think that'll, I personally think that it's a little more optimistic than people believe, and that it will somewhat fix itself out with more reps together.
I think too with the it kind of correlates with some of the statistics that we saw today with Lance in the first half versus the second half of practice, that the offensive line, you said, kind of struggled in the second part of practice, and then you saw his numbers kind of take a dip. His completion percentage looked really good early in practice. So offensive line does matter. But you're right. It's a work in progress, and we still have 4 weeks till the season starts, something, or I don't know. It's May 3rd tomorrow, or May 3rd. It's August 3rd tomorrow. The season starts. I think
you're back in work, man. You should know the dates,
dude. I'm all. It's my age, man. That's what happens when you get old. You forget things. But yeah, I'm not super worried about the offensive line either. It is a concern as far as like it can limit things once we get into the season, and we might not see the full like ability of, say, Trey or anybody if the offensive line struggles that bad. But like I said, we got so much time, and I feel like right now.
Let me know if he froze or if I froze, because I don't know.
Oh, I'm back. This happens every single time I have a stream.
Uh-oh.
I'm moving. Can you see me? Hello?
Oh, he froze. Okay. Oh, now we're back. Okay, I see you. You're
all
blank.
Right. Oh, now you're froze. Why does this happen every time?
Okay, are we good?
Are we back?
No, we're not.
Oh, hello? Anybody? Oh my gosh.
Oh, now it's just me. Uh-oh. All right, we'll wait for Aaron to get back, and then we'll continue. Party of the screen, it looks.
Are we back?
Ah, there we go. There we go.
What in the world is going on here? Every single time I have a freaking stream, I have a really good internet too, which makes 0 sense.
I think it's StreamYard. I just blame StreamYard, Restream, whatever the system
Every time
is.
I have the mesh internet, the one with the zones and everything, and it's all. I hate this. Are we good now, everybody? Are we kind of good? I guess. Order.
There we go.
66.
Chris said good, so I think we're good.
All right. We were talking. I think we pretty much nailed it on the head. We were talking about the offensive line and how the defense and other reasons why the offensive line might be struggling. So I think we move on to the to my next topic, and let's talk a little bit about those D-line injuries. Hassan Ridgeway out for a couple weeks. Looks like Eric Armstead has said he's okay, and it's not that big of a deal, and everybody needs to calm down. And then, of course, Maurice Hurst lost for the season, torn bicep. You concerned about the 49ers' depth being affected a little bit, or with the other two guys kind of coming back after a hiatus, are you not worried too much?
I'm actually not that worried. I hope Armstead is back for week 1. It's because of 2 reasons. One is just because of the rest of the depth on the roster. The 49ers, in a way, can fortunately afford to lose one or two guys, but also like overall, the main reason is the emergence of the other players. Javon Kinlaw was back at practice today after a rest. Javon Kinlaw looks like the old Javon Kinlaw. I'm very excited for him. My only question is how many reps can he have on the field regularly? He hasn't practiced in full yet. So that is one question that I have for Javon Kinlaw. And also, can he remain durable? The other question that I have, or the other reason, is Kevin Gibbons. Kevin Gibbons has looked good as a member of the first team defense. Kevin Gibbons, obviously getting the reps with Arik Armstead out, and took all the first team DT reps yesterday with both Kinlaw and Armstead out. I think Kevin Gibbons, honestly, is a pretty good defensive lineman, one of the better backups in the NFL. Based on what I've seen so far, he's beaten the interior guys, beat Burford and beat Banks over the last couple of days. So I think he's looked good, and that's why I'm not as concerned. There is good depth, obviously not necessarily as quality depth. The Mo Hurst one hurts a little bit, but not as much because he didn't play last year. He was looking good, though, in the initial part of camp. He was DT number 4. He was the guy opposite of Kevin Gibbons on second team, and now that person has been rotated with a number of different guys. But I think overall the depth is still there, and the defensive line still has managed to wreak havoc despite the loss of Arik Armstead.
How has Robert Kimadiche looked so far in camp?
Mcglinchey is funny, man. Mcglinchey is interesting because obviously he was recently signed. He's been one of the flashes. Originally, I was like, yeah, this is the camp body in a way. But then the 49ers sustained 3 injuries, and really the injury to Mo Hurst has got me thinking that Mcglinchey's got a shot to make the roster. Because Mo Hurst and Mcglinchey obviously are interior rushers, and Mcglinchey has flashed so far. He's an energy guy for sure. He's been really pumped. Like, the coaching staff has had to calm him down sometimes in terms of his energy. Say, hey, dude, like, tone it down a little bit just because. But Mcglinchey is a guy you'll see every single day pumping up the 49er fans on the sideline. He's a funny guy. But in terms of his play, he's done pretty good against the second and third team defense. He hasn't gotten first team reps, but second and third team reps, he's done pretty good. I know he schooled. Ooh, who was it that he schooled? He continuously beat one player the other day. Jason Poe. He continuously beat Jason Poe the other day for like a sack and a half, and then like on the second team, and he's gotten in the backfield a couple of times. So Mcglinchey has looked good. I honestly now think that he can make the roster, like I said, as opposed to before.
I mean, this defense, what was I watching? They were talking about how this defense could have the 12 to 14 players that could rush the passer in the NFL. Might have been, I don't know if it was NFL Network, who exactly, but yeah, I'm not too concerned about losing Maurice Hurst because we really didn't see much of him last year. The Ridgeway and the Arik Armstead injuries seem to be something that hopefully by the beginning of the season we'll be fine. So I'm not super worried about the defensive line, at least right now. Me, camp, and just getting through camp, injury free as possible is really all I care about. Because I want to see this team try to make a run this year as healthy as possible, like other teams do. I want to see how good this team can be without a lot of nagging injuries against, on core players. So that seems like it's been kind of the thing with the Shanahan Lynch regime so far, is we really haven't had a season where we were like completely clear of injuries, and no one's ever going to be. It's always going to be an issue in the NFL, but I like to see this team injury free as possible and see how good they can be without, a major player being, on the IR for the whole season. But
yeah,
I can't wait, dude. Training camp is great and preseason is great, but his regular season is where it's at. So to me, this is just stay healthy, get to the season, and then that's when I lose. That's when I really become an unhinged individual who will stream a lot because I have a lot of stuff to talk about. This time of year, I'm almost like I'm just biding my time and sitting on my hands because I don't want anybody to get hurt. So,
well, I want unhinged friends, so I'm tuning in during the regular season because I want to see that.
Yeah, I'm hard to deal with during the season. If you watch games with me, I am a miserable human being. I am so high with the highs and low with the low. My nephew's the same way. We're so bad. People will question if we're 49er fans when they watch games with us just because of the lack of just like, we seem like we hate everybody on the team. I think it was the Seattle the game where I'm trying to think, that was the game where Emmanuel Sanders got hurt. Devo made it was Emmanuel Sanders got hurt. It was the Seattle game where Greenlaw got the pick, brought all the way back to midfield. The Niners offense couldn't do anything. Man, if you could have been in the room when me and my nephew were trashing Jimmy that day, I think that's where we both kind of jumped officially off the Jimmy bandwagon and became like, man, we need a real quarterback. And it's been since that point in 2019 where things worked out the way that they did, and we were able to get up to the third pick and get that, Trey Lance's quarterback. So now, we're gonna have to put our money where our mouth is, and hopefully Trey Lance works out so we can feel justified for how he felt. But yeah, that was an interesting time. Thank you, Chris Royal, for the 199 super. I appreciate it very, very much. He said, would you bring in Sheldon Richardson on a vet minimum?
I wouldn't. I think there is still good depth. I mean, I wouldn't. If I'm asking if you expect him to make the roster. If you're asking me, would I bring him in and anticipate him making the roster? No. I think there still are defensive linemen right now on this team, like a good amount, 10, 11 defensive linemen that can fight for a roster spot right now. I think Richardson can be brought in just as a camp body, maybe, but I think that right now, I don't envision a guy like Richardson making the roster.
That's a great answer. I couldn't have said it better myself. Let's jump to the, first of all, I want to say what's up to Bashar. He says, what's up, Aaron and Rohan?
That's my guy.
Jimmy Garoppolo, how were you a little bit miffed or turned off by the video of him running sprints at camp while the rest of the team was out there? Because me and the NWO crew last night were not real cool with that. We thought that was kind of a Bush League move. He's not the quarterback of this team anymore. He shouldn't have been out there. Somebody said in the comments he should have ran up at the high school or something. Like, why did he have to be in camp while everybody else was practicing? What was your take? I can tell by the way your body language is, you didn't have an issue with it, but I did.
Yeah, so to start off, I'll just preface with this. The 49ers and Jimmy he's actually been in the building a lot. He has this rehab injury throwing program that he's been doing. It's just normally you don't see him because he's doing it at 7:30 a.m. in the morning sometimes, and getting out of the building before fans. And like I'm there at the stadium at 9 o'clock, 9:15 in the morning, and normally Garoppolo is gone by then. That one day I think Garoppolo just had his conditioning part, because I'm sure the 49ers are all scheduling this as well, because it's with 49er guys as well, and they're fine with it. It was a shock. I was not because that was at the time, obviously, when Deebo hadn't signed his deal. This was a couple of days ago when Deebo hadn't signed his deal. So the day before or 2 days before, we had seen Deebo Samuel be running on the sideline with his conditioning. So everyone was like looking at that sideline every couple of minutes, trying to see whether Deebo Samuel would come out again or not. And instead, to our surprise, we see Jimmy Garoppolo there. And we're like, wow, Jimmy Garoppolo's here. I didn't really care, just because I know he's been doing his rehab-ish program with the 49er at the 49er stadium. And there isn't video today because they didn't allow us to film during this portion. I'll say it in a minute. But the funny thing was, during that time, Jimmy Garoppolo got a huge standing ovation for the fans. Everyone was like, Jimmy, come over to the sidelines and stuff. And so that was definitely an interesting thing. But today, Jimmy Garoppolo was there and did a lot more than just run. So he was there very early. I got there maybe at 9:15, 9:10. Garoppolo was already running by then, and nobody was on the field. It was just Jason Verrett had first come out, because he's also going through an injury program. Verrett first came out. He was running. Garoppolo then came out and he started running. And then Garoppolo started throwing also. So we saw him throw passes of 10 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards, up to 50 yards. He threw about 10 passes of 50 yards. I didn't see the entirety of it because it was on the far end of the field and players had started coming out and practicing. But then Garoppolo after that came out and he went away after that. So he's kind of like doing his business on the side, which is interesting, obviously, given the way that the team is like the situation is going on. But how many, Jimmy actually threw pretty well. It's interesting. Like he looks back to regular Jimmy. I mean, maybe if you put a linebacker there, he might throw to the linebacker.
Absolutely.
I'm joking.
Just sit Fred Warner right in the middle of the practice field.
Yeah. But no, he was throwing the ball. Like he had a some throwing program where he's throwing the ball in all from short to long, and he was throwing fine. I think he's ready. Like in terms of health wise, he obviously got cleared a couple of weeks ago, and I think he is ready.
There was a picture of a bunch of fans at the bottom of the stands on some staircase who, instead of watching practices, were watching Jimmy. They were so enamored by him. And I'm just like, dude, the dream is over. It's finished. It's not happening. He's not going to stay. Speaking of that, what's do you have any insider info? Have you heard anything as far as any activity with Jimmy who's interested? I heard the Giants last week were a possible team, but I don't believe anything until like there's concrete evidence and multiple people report it. Well, I was going to say, and then there's the Seattle talk that why would Seattle give up anything? They're just waiting for him to be cut. Right? And that the Niners are going to wait till the end of camp so that he can't just jump in and, learn their playbook and all that stuff. What's the real story? Have you heard anything about Jimmy Garoppolo and his possible destination?
Yeah, and real quick, I got to give a shout out to Charles O'Menahue. He is I didn't even know he was like on Twitter. And today, yeah. I mean, I've been obviously tweeting, right? Him. And O'Menahue has liked a couple of my tweets today. That's
nice.
That's actually been pretty cool because I've been tweeting obviously about O'Menahue because he's gotten first team reps.
I've heard that he's had a really good camp.
Yeah,
he's been really strong.
He I think he will definitely be there. But overall, you asked about the Jimmy Garoppolo destinations. Funnily enough, I was actually the one that broke. Me and my co-host Marco Martinez were the ones that broke the New York Giants information, and I will tell you what I've posted in an article. So we were the ones that broke it, and that's where like I got a bunch of love for it and a bunch of backlash for it because we broke the story. So I'll tell you what I've heard and what I've that I've put out there. So insider information in a way, but that's outside now. And that is the New York Giants have called in on Jimmy Garoppolo. They are one team to call in about Jimmy Garoppolo. And remember, when you call in about a player, that does not mean you are going to trade for the player, because right now, Jimmy Garoppolo, nobody is trading for him at his current salary. I've made that extremely clear. You call in so that you can discuss about a rework contract. The Giants are different than other teams that have called in because they have actually called in to discuss about a rework contract and gone into, in a way, just talked about a contract. That's the story that I reported. They've talked about a contract because Garoppolo's deal will need to be reworked, and it can be reworked because he has no guaranteed money. So for those of you that are watching, in a way, think about it like this. Jimmy Garoppolo right now is a free agent. He is negotiating a new deal with a different team. Now, once he potentially signs that deal or agrees in principle to that deal, then the 49ers, it's essentially going to be a sign and trade. The 49ers will get compensation from a team and then agree to change Jimmy Garoppolo's structure on his contract, then ship him out to whatever team that is and get compensation in return. So the Jimmy Garoppolo story, pretty much so far, the one team that I've heard has been the New York Giants, and they have been in talks about a contract extension, a contract reworking. That is the one story. That doesn't mean necessarily that it will get done, nor is it any way close to being done, but I can understand it. When you talk about Garoppolo and the Giants, I've heard conflicting reports about Daniel Jones in practice. He's looked great on some days, including today. He was phenomenal, but looked shaky on some other days. Maybe it's because of the offensive line. Maybe it's because of other reasons, but when you talk about the new offense, this is a new system. Brian Dable is the new head coach. He did not draft Daniel Jones, as well as the new GM, Joe Schoen, who did not draft Daniel Jones. They signed Tyrod Taylor to be a backup for 2 years, and Tyrod Taylor potentially could be involved in a Jimmy Garoppolo trade.
I was just going to ask you that.
But I'll talk about that in a minute. But Garoppolo, when you look at the receivers over there, they've got Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, and Wan'Dale Robinson, all of whom work really well after the catch. And who is a quarterback who is thrown to receivers who works really well after the catch? Jimmy Garoppolo. Yep. Exactly. And so it is a good system fit, in my opinion, for Jimmy Garoppolo. It's just interesting because, in my opinion, Jimmy Garoppolo and Daniel Jones are the absolute opposites of quarterback. And the one issue right now, obviously, when you talk about training camp, it's hard because you have to face an install. Like you have to completely change your install in a way or implement a new quarterback into your install, and training camp has already begun. There's only 10 days left, right, of training camp. So that's the one question mark in a way. But Garoppolo to New York, I could foresee it as a possibility, especially with the rework contract, and then sending back Tyrod Taylor because to help New York with their salary situation, because I believe they have $5 million in cap space right now. So let's say Garoppolo signs a $13 million deal or whatever it is. I'd assume it's going to be an incentivized contract with some guaranteed money this year. You bring back Tyrod Taylor, and then some way, in a way, that maybe the Giants have a salary shedding move or something like that. But yeah, that could be a potential possibility I can see. I don't necessarily foresee it happening yet, but it's a possibility.
What side of the argument do you fall on the jackhammer, Jesse, about, sign a – well, Jack had a mindset of like, you maybe keep Jimmy and keep him at a reduced rate because, there's not really, good backups are hard to come by. And then Jesse was more of along the lines of, there's about, however many teams in the NFL, if their starter goes down, their season's pretty much over anyway. So like the Niners shouldn't invest that and should just, the Chiefs, if they lose Mahomes, they're done. The Bills, if they lose Allen, they're done. The Bucks, if they lose Tom Brady, they're done. The Rams, if they lose Stafford, they're done. And, investing that much money into a backup, Jesse, I kind of agree with Jesse, but I also see Jack's point about, we've seen seasons where a quarterback has went down in our team and how pretty much it's been a wrap. So I wish like something like a Tyrod Taylor swap would happen, because I think Tyrod Taylor has proven to be a really good backup and a mentor. So if that was the case, I would definitely not hate it. But like you said, right now they're just talking turkey about contracts and money. So I talked about it yesterday with the group and NWO. They were whatever really about it. No, not one way or the other. Didn't move the needle. But I would be okay with a guy like Tyrod Taylor. Are you kind of the same point?
I'm fine with Tyrod Taylor just based on what I've seen. I think Tyrod Taylor is a quarterback, obviously, who's a little more conservative, but Nate Sudfeld is conservative. When I've seen Nate Sudfeld obviously throw now a little more, install obviously kind of forced him to throw a little deeper. He struggles with his deep accuracy. That's the main thing. It's not that he doesn't have the arm strength. I think his arm strength is much better, far better than Brock Purdy, but when you talk about the accuracy, he continuously overthrows receivers. He has a couple of good plays. I'm not going to get you wrong, but more so than not, he continuously overthrows receivers. Whereas with Trey Lance and his accuracy, throwing deep, it's not that the ball is off place. It's just the completion didn't occur. So that's to me is a little concerning about Sudfeld. But I definitely respect both people, and I think they're both intelligent people. But I've made the argument that Jesse's made. When you have a backup quarterback, when you're trying to rely on a backup quarterback, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. There's been one instance, and a lot of people hang on to that instance, which is Nick Foles. And Jesse came on my show yesterday and made a very interesting point. People are too strung up on Jimmy Garoppolo and his injury history that they've looked so entirely on the 8-28 record without him. No, the reason that that seasons failed wasn't because backup quarterbacks couldn't get the job done. It's because your starter continuously got injured. That is the issue. And so to me, I agree. I think that Jimmy Garoppolo at a reduced price would be the best backup quarterback in the NFL. I'm not going to disagree with that with Jackson. I think both points have warrant. Because
Yes.
Jimmy Garoppolo would be the best backup in the NFL at this moment if he were to become a backup quarterback at a reduced price. I think that that's fine. I just think right now, with the way that the situation has gone, it's unresolvable from both sides. Garoppolo clearly doesn't want to be there. He already gave his he already said goodbye. When you look back at his press conference back in January after finishing the season, or February, excuse me, Garoppolo really said goodbye, and he understood it. The 49ers themselves said it as well. This is a business decision because you just can't factor it in with the salary cap. On top of that, I'm not as worried about the Lance Garoppolo controversy as much, just given the relationship between the two, at least what it appears to be. But right now, I think the 49ers, I don't think Garoppolo honestly would agree to a deal to become the backup with San Francisco. I think that just wouldn't be the case. I don't think he'll agree to a rework deal with San Francisco. So first of all, I don't even think it's realistic. And keeping him at his price is a hindrance, not only for this year, but, and I'm not saying it about the player, I'm saying $27 million is in the balance. And I think it would be extremely helpful if you carried that money over to 2023, where you have to extend a significant amount of players. You talk about Nick Bosa getting the biggest contract of a 49er in recent history. You talk about Emmanuel Mosley likely requiring some nice cornerback money, and I want to extend Emmanuel Mosley through the entirety of his prime. You talk about Jimmy Ward, who is coming off the last year of his contract. He already told you he's going to F your favorite player up and then head into free agency. I think he should be a 49er for life. You should extend him. And so you need this money, and I understand the cap is going to significantly explode, but I also think the market in a way is going to translate in that way and all continue to increase. So I think it's important, but also because you might want mid-season acquisition. Who was the team that got the mid-season acquisition last year? Your division rival, the Los Angeles Rams, who were able to pick up Von Miller. I think that's really important because if you're going to make a full push for it, you need that money, cap space. And that's where Odell Beckham got to go to the Rams because they found a way to create cap, and Von Miller got to go to the Rams. So to me, that's where I think is very important to have that additional cap space so that you push yourself ahead of other bidders, because teams at the midseason mark don't want to take on the entirety of their contract to play for the team. So you can do that. You limit the amount that you have to pay for them, and it's a win-win.
Ryan from No Border Sports made a good point last night, and I totally forgot. And he told me, Aaron, didn't I make my point good enough? He said, why bank on a backup when you can invest keeping your starter on the field, aka offensive line? Do you kind of agree with, the premise that, instead of putting money into a backup, get better offensive linemen, like a center of some worth, some merit? Because right now the Niners center looks like it's between Brunskill and, who I'm trying to say, Brendel. And neither of those inspire a ton of confidence, at least in some of us. You've been there. You may have a different opinion, but yeah, I agree with Ryan on that one. That I agree on a lot of different points. I can see both sides of arguments. You know what I mean? I could understand both sides, but at the end of the day, I'd rather not spend the money on a backup. Mm-hmm. And Bashar from 49er Minded made a good point. He said, our backup shouldn't have even been NFL players. I completely agree on that one. I'm sure Beathard is a really nice guy, but man, him and our other backup who, what the hell is his name? Number 4. Who was our backup in 2020?
Nick Mullins?
Nick Mullins. Neither of those guys honestly should be in the NFL. They're just not that good. So I agree with Bashar on that one, 110%. Let's go to the running back position. We were talking about it again last night, me and the group, me and the boys. We were talking about who might be the odd man out. Would it be Jermichael Hasty, Jeff Wilson Jr.? We have the emergence of Jordan Mason.
What about both?
We have the emergence of Jordan Mason, TDP. Who's looked good in camp? And do you agree with the premise that maybe both of those guys are expendable?
I do. And I've actually said it myself. I'm just basing it off the performance. I understand roster politics, but I don't think Kyle Shanahan will invoke that, really. I think he really wants to get the 4 players to play it. So starting off at the running back position, Elijah Mitchell has got a majority of the number 1 snaps with Trey Lance. As expected, I think he's the clear-cut running back 1. I don't think anybody eclipses him this year so far, at least to begin the year. Trey Sermon, though, a lot of people wrote him off. A lot of people have said negative remarks about him. He's looked really good. And nice. I'm not going to say really good. Let me calm down, because today was his really good performance. Today was his best practice by far. He looked very explosive. He looked decisive with his cuts. And last year he was trying to cut too much, being a horizontal runner as opposed to a downfield runner. This year he understands it. He cuts really quickly, but also as a downfield runner, cutting only once and moving downfield. His vision seems to be improving as well. He had a majority of his plays were pretty good today. And I think he makes good decisions, even if there's not a hole and the gain is a short gain. The decision that he made to get to that point, I think we're still pretty good. Sermon right now is a clear-cut running back 2 in my eyes. Davis Price has been running back 3, but I honestly think Jordan Mason might be even more impressive than him so far. He just runs with he's quick. He runs with a series of physicalness, but he's also a really good pass catcher out of the backfield so far. I think he might be the best receiver in this backfield throughout the first couple of practices training camp. So I think that both of those guys, I honestly think I'd be disappointed if Jordan Mason didn't make this roster at least and wasn't a practice squad guy, because I think Mason has a good claim to be, or a good argument to be claimed by maybe Seattle. If Seattle ends up with Jordan Mason, I'm going to be pissed, because he's a good running back. He's an NFL caliber running back. As opposed to the other two, Hasty, I think, has looked the better of the bunch, surprisingly, than Jeff Wilson Jr. I think Hasty, honestly, I can understand why the coaching staff likes him, but I think he's limited in his skill set. He's good at what he does, but he's limited in what he does too. And I think that combined with his potential fumble issues in a running offense that should be more physical this year might be an issue. Whereas the other guys that I mentioned, I see Ryan saying we got a dog. Yeah, Jordan Mason is a dog. Like he is a bona fide dog. So you gotta, like, I'm not too worried about those those 4 that I mentioned. Hasty might have a fumble issue, right? We've seen it a little bit in the past. And also I'm not that confident with him as a receiver. Today he had a one-on-one rep against Fred Warner. It's only 1 rep, but he ran a fine route. But then as he looked to make the catch, it's somewhat of a difficult catch, but the ball just bounced right off his chest. I'm not that confident in him as a receiver. He's had nice receiving plays, but I'm not as confident in him. I also saw his film last year, and there were times where he just didn't look that great as a receiver on routes that weren't easy to catch, right? I'm not saying flats. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the wheels. I'm saying the routes that are important as a running back, where Kyle Juszczyk can get them, where guys like Mason can get them. But he's still looked better than Jeff Wilson Jr., who has been this, like, he's been my disappointment of training camp so far, Jeff Wilson Jr. He just looks slower. He looks less explosive. And it might be just because he's older and post-injury, right? But right now, after following that injury that he had last year, he just hasn't looked the same. And I don't think Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to make this team.
What would it say, again, if the Niners find another gem in Jordan Mason, that the Shanahans in general as a family, or maybe just, I mean, this has been going on since the Denver Bronco days, right? They would just find running backs. Me and my brother were talking about this last year. He goes, you find running backs everywhere. I told him, I was like, that's why you never draft high as a running back, unless it's just a bona fide, you think he's going to be the second coming of Eric Dickerson or Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders. Because the Niners have proven time in and time out that they could find running backs off the freaking scrap heap and make them bona fide players. And maybe they go to another team and are never as effective. So that really just makes me happy that they might. I'm actually kind of pulling for Jordan Mason. And then if neither Hasty or Jeff Wilson Jr. make this roster, I'm not too disappointed in that. I feel like someone like Jeff Wilson Jr. could jump or catch on with something like Miami at some point, just because of his relationship. That's almost like the only place I could. That's kind of like when I think about if he leaves a team, if either of them leave the team, where they could go. And all I can think of is Miami Dolphins, but Miami Dolphins got their own problems right now. That's a whole other ball of wax. I guess my last question to you, and it's not really a football question, it's more of a camp getting to guys. I heard there was a couple fights today. Did you see them? And how stoked were you to see a training camp fight? 2 of them.
So fun. So fun. Like, you knew that the second one was going to happen the second that it happened, or the second that it was going down. The first one was surprising, right? Because it was an unexpected thing. I think the first one was a Trey Lance. I think it was an incompletion to Brandon Ayuk. And then Fred Warner kind of tried to slap the ball out of his hands after the play. Fred Warner wasn't the cover. It was Mosley that was covering. And then Fred Warner tried to kind of like slap the ball out of the hands. I didn't see the origination, but I know that Warner, Mosley, and Ayuk were together, and Ayuk and Warner kind of went at it. And then there was a skirmish. They both tackled each other to the ground.
Oh, boy.
That kind of like took a minute to separate. Then about 6 plays later, there was a Trey Lance. He got sacked on the play. It was I think it was a blitz. And then he threw a 6-yard pass, a slant to Marcus Johnson. And then after the whistle, or after like the play was over, kind of, or I guess it was after the whistle, because Johnson, because it was a sack, Warner kind of laid a boom on Marcus Johnson a little bit after the play. And then Ayuk, right after that, stands up for his receiver. He goes straight up to Warner, squares up. Warner squares up, and they go at it again and had to be separated. That one was separated a little quicker, but it was two nice ones. It was Ayuk and Warner kind of. And I personally, not only stoked to see it, but Shanahan was, I think he was irate. I don't think Shanahan was that happy.
Yeah, tackling guys to the ground. Guys can get hurt, and then you lose them over a fight.
Yeah,
so I understand.
That was the part I was a little scared about, because obviously these guys haven't been tackled at all, right? You don't get tackled in practice. So that was the one part I was scared about, was like, please, no rolled ankles or anything. But overall, it was nice. First of all, just like my thoughts on it. I mean, you heard about this earlier, right? Brandon Ayuk earlier in the week talked about Fred Warner and said, man, this guy's annoying. This guy's a pest. And then Fred Warner's like, I like to be annoying. I like to push these guys. I like to push them. And then Brandon Ayuk, obviously, this in a way was a moment of his leadership, because Trey said it. He's not a loud guy. He's not really that vocal, in a way, leader. He's a lead by example guy. But today he led by his actions. And in a way, this, like, when you have this kind of fight, it sparks fire, right, in your offense. I relate it to an MLB ejection, where a manager kind of goes in, yells at the umpire just to get his team fired up, and then they play. And the offense was pretty good today. And then Ayuk coming here, I got the quote even of what Ayuk said right afterwards. Ayuk said this: "It was a little friendly training camp scuffle. It's hot today, so temper's flaring today, but it's football. Football season's here. The defense came out here with a great intensity over the last couple of days, so we've got to wake the offense up one way or another."
I'm totally fine with it, man. I really am. I don't have any issues whatsoever. As far as guys getting tackled on the ground, that's really my biggest concern. You're a pretty young guy, but during the divisional playoff game in 1995, it was the year the Niners beat the Chargers. Steve Young got hit late after scoring a running touchdown. Jerry Rice was one of the first guys in there to defend Steve Young, along with like William Floyd and all those guys. It was a massive cheap shot on Young. He had already scored, and he just got like speared to the ground by whoever the defender was. And I have no problem with the guys taking up for their teammates, especially if it's an offensive player taking up for another offensive player. That's exactly what you want. And I'm glad that Ayuk is starting to kind of assert a little bit of dominance. You know, he's like that the dog who's finally decided he's going to pee on, the tree or whatever, and be like, this is my deal right here. Don't cross me. So I'm okay with that, because you're right. He's a quiet guy. When you watch his press conferences, he looks so uncomfortable. So it's always the quiet ones you got to worry about. But and Fred Warner was, from what I heard, he was kind of like that last year too. He was a little bit instigating, and bro, I don't have a problem with that either. Just do it on Sunday to the other team. You can tackle them all you want, but I want to see that. You want to see that they care, and that they can get under each other's skin. And
Definitely.
To me, if there's no emotion in training camp and it's just business as usual, it's almost like, do these guys really give a flying about it? So I'm fine with it. Just don't hurt each other. I thought it was interesting that I read a report about one fight, and then literally a couple minutes later, I read a report of like, all right, twice. That's why I can never be a professional athlete, because I'm easily agitated and I have a bad temper.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my brother always talk about how I can never play sports, because I remember seeing the Gronkowski drop the elbow on one guy on the Bills that one time. I forgot what happened. Oh, it's totally me.
On Trey White, yeah.
Yeah, I would totally do something like that. I would get pissed off, and I would just drop all my body weight on somebody, some little DB. I told my brother, I'm just not meant for sports. My temper would get me ejected constantly. So as long as they can keep it, kind of controlled and reserved, then I'm okay with it. I like the intensity, but I'm happy that you were able to be there, man. I'm glad that you're able to be there. I'm glad that you're able to mingle with others who are doing the same thing. And
there are
I'm so happy for you, man, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You are doing what if I could go back in time and figure out a career, what I wanted to do, that I didn't know that I wanted to do it 20 years ago, but if I had the foresight of looking into the future, dude, you guys like you and Jason and Brad from SF, I forgot.
Yeah, the SF Niners.
Yeah, dude, that's great. Nothing but props and nothing but like fist bumps, man, because like you can't hate on people, man. I made a tweet the other day about sometimes when you're a content creator, you got to have something that you can bring to the table. And you kind of realize when you're just a fan YouTuber like myself that maybe you don't have said talents. And then you see guys that have those, like yourself. Me and Bashar were talking last night, and we said that you are like a walking encyclopedia. You can just, and it's awesome. No hate. That's awesome. It's great. So I'm proud of you, man. I keep doing good. I can't wait to see your channel blow up even more. Like I said, I've been watching your view count on some of your lives, and for a while I was like, why is nobody watching this guy? He knows what he's talking about. He's there. And then all of a sudden, boom. So I hope that continues to grow too.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And obviously it's a pleasure always talking with you. You're a great guy yourself. And I mean, you continuously just continue, like, if it's bringing guests, if it's yourself, you're just continuously a guy that like I enjoy listening to, because you don't necessarily have a sense of negativity always. You mix in the negative and the positive. Like I know you've said you're overly negative, but I think you've definitely done a good job in a way to be neutral and just make it a great space for someone to come in and enjoy themselves as well. So I appreciate and applaud you for that. And yeah, I'm definitely glad that we got to do this again.
Definitely. And I just want to say thanks to the people in the chat too. This is a later night for me because I have to work early, but I couldn't pass up.
Wow.
Yeah, but I couldn't, like when I saw that you were like, let's do Tuesday, I'm like, screw sleep.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Like, quick story before we finish, because I saw Aaron tweet me out on, I forgot what day it was, but then I had been going, like, I haven't realized.
I figured that you and Jason were both probably like buried in mentions and stuff. So
like, I remember seeing a glimpse of it, but then I didn't realize until this last period, because I've been tweeting constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, unfortunately, I can't see your comments, like, because they just continuously just cite, like, every second.
They bury each other. I've seen that. I know exactly what you mean.
So I have to click on mentions, and I love talking to you guys. So I click on mentions once a day, and I just go ahead and respond to every single comment that is a question, because I ask for questions and I answer. So normally I do that at 4:30 after I've written an article, after I've done my stream and stuff. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to Chris, because he's been in a couple of my new streams. Got to give a shout out to him. Thank you for tuning in the last couple of days. Definitely really appreciate it.
I'm not sure if I've seen Chris in here before. I think I have. I think I've seen him on other places as well. So thanks for popping in here. And yeah, you're right. Lots of young and up and coming content creators like Rohan. Yeah, you young cats, man. Some of you guys, it's man, what a pleasure. I tell you, I will say this, and I don't mean this as a negative thing. 49er YouTube is very, very, there's a lot. It can be almost phenomenal. A little bit oversaturated. Mm-hmm. Compared to some other fan bases. Me and Bashar were talking about that the other night as well, because we chat offline. We were just talking about how 49er YouTube is just so oversaturated, but it's a good problem to have, because some fan bases, they're not represented at all. Like, I go to find certain guys, like, I want to collaborate with every fan base, and there's no channels for some of these. You go to 49er YouTube and there's like 100 or more. So it's great. It's been 3 years since I started this. I've had a chance to rub elbows with a lot of people that know a lot more than I do. And I have never had once a feeling of like jealousy or hatred, because I feel like, why wouldn't you rub elbows with people that know more than you, especially if you want to know more about the team that you care about and follow and learn. I'm always big on learning. Like I said, you are a walking computer encyclopedia, whatever you want to call it, but it's a good thing. So props to you and your channel. Props to the chat. Thank you for coming in on a weird late night Tuesday. I don't think I've ever streamed on a Tuesday, but
hey, everybody gotta do what you gotta do.
You gotta do what you gotta do. Everybody take care. Thank you again for your participation. I didn't answer a lot of questions tonight because I want to listen to Rohan. But everybody
guys,
take care.
If you have questions, you can even just text me on Twitter and I'll get back to him 100%.
He will. He found me. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, yes. But
Yeah, I was watching you for a while before we connected because I liked your channel. I was watching you for a while, and now we glad we got to do this twice.
yeah, I'm totally stoked. This was great. I got a lot of information out of you tonight. So everybody, thanks again. Everybody have a great rest of your night. Take care. And as I always say to everyone, I'll see you on the flip side. See you, everyone.
Yes, sir.